Ancient geniuses built a Great Pyramid water pumping system on the Giza Plateau. We will begin our explanation of how the water pump in the Great Pyramid structure operated by focusing our attention on the Grand Gallery. If this chamber was not already in a wonder of the world, it would be a wonder of the world. This chamber is long and tall and built on an incline. It was built with extreme precision. As described in our first video series, this chamber was built level by level along with the rest of the Great Pyramid structure. It is famous for the inability to push a needle between the joints of the stones of the Grand Gallery. These stones are bonded together airtight and watertight using an extremely strong bonding agent. This is not to keep the pharaoh's soul from symbolically leaking out. No, this chamber was purpose-built with extreme precision, and there is no other chamber like it on earth. The Grand Gallery was built with a specific purpose. Some say this chamber confirms Bible prophecy, and others say this chamber is symbolic, but this researcher is offering another explanation for this unique and fantastic chamber. That purpose is for pumping water. The previous video showed how water was delivered 50 feet above the bedrock on the Giza Plateau. The geniuses were able to supply water to the input of the Great Pyramid water pump at the upper end of the descending passage. Earlier videos described the operation of the subterranean water pump that has its output connected to the lower end of the Grand Gallery. The lower end of the Grand Gallery is the input for the upper pump built into the Great Pyramid structure. In describing how the Grand Gallery functioned, I will describe how I contend the Grand Gallery existed back when the Great Pyramid water pumping system was operational. This chamber had a number of moving stones and doors on pivots that are now lost to the sands of time because they were destroyed by countless unnamed despoilers who have roamed these passages and chambers through the centuries. There is not enough time in these short videos to justify every aspect of why we contend these features once existed in this chamber, but much more information is found in my book, The Great Pyramid Prosperity Machine, which justifies the contention that these various movable stones once were present in this chamber. When the Grand Gallery was originally built, there were a number of moving and pivoting stones. These stones acted as the movable parts of valves. There were 3 valves in the Grand Gallery. One of these valves was at the top of this chamber, and 2 valves were at the bottom. Deep inside the structure of the Great Pyramid is the Grand Gallery. The stones of this large precision-built chamber are bonded together. There were 3 valves in this chamber. The first valve acted like a check valve, allowing water to enter the Grand Gallery from the lower pump. This is where water entered the upper pump. Water cannot move back down through this check valve. The second valve was at the top of the Grand Gallery. This valve acted like a one-way check valve, allowing gases to exit the Grand Gallery, but would not normally allow gases to enter the Grand Gallery. The third valve was at the bottom of the Grand Gallery. This valve did not operate automatically like a check valve. It was opened and closed at the proper time and for the proper duration by a method described later. This valve allowed water to move into the horizontal passage leading to the Queen's chamber, but not allow water to move back into the Grand Gallery. Also in the lower end of the Grand Gallery were a number of large metal plates. These plates were submerged in water and used for the process of electrolysis. The pairs of slots on each side of the Grand Gallery held the supports for the plates. How the plates were energized at the proper time and for the proper duration will be discussed later. There are deposits of so-called salts on the stones of the Grand Gallery. These deposits on the stones were caused by the electrolysis process. When these plates were energized, hydrogen and oxygen were separated from the water. These two gases filled the upper region of the Grand Gallery. Electrolysis occurred in the Grand Gallery, separating hydrogen and oxygen from water. The supports for the electrolysis plates and associated components were anchored into the pairs of slots on each side of the Grand Gallery. This was the purpose of these slots. There are pairs of slots on each side of the Grand Gallery. These distinctive slots were used to hold the supports for the electrolysis plates and associated components. The large electrolysis plates were easily held in place by the supports anchored in these slots. The Grand Gallery operated in 4 distinct phases or cycles. In the beginning of Phase 1, there is water in the lower portion of the Grand Gallery. This is because water was pumped through the subterranean water pump up past the check valve and into the Grand Gallery. The electrolysis plates are submerged in water. The electrolysis plates are energized, starting the electrolysis process. Hydrogen and oxygen are separated from water in this chamber. These two gases migrate to the upper area of the Grand Gallery. How the electrolysis plates were powered and how they were energized at the proper time and duration will be addressed in subsequent videos. The result of Phase 1 is that there is both hydrogen and oxygen in the upper portion of the Grand Gallery. This completes Phase 1, and the electrolysis plates are turned off. How the plates are connected to the power source at the proper time and for the proper duration will be described in a subsequent video in this series. How these electrolysis plates are powered will also be addressed as well. The purpose of Phase 1 was to separate hydrogen and oxygen from water in an enclosed chamber. After this was accomplished, Phase 2 started. The gases of hydrogen and oxygen are combustible. The original builders ignited that mixture of gases in the upper end of the Grand Gallery. How this was done automatically and at the proper time will be explained in a video later in this series. When this mixture was ignited, this caused an almost instantaneous high pressure in the upper end of the Grand Gallery. This pressure caused the spent gases to move past the check valve in the upper end of the Grand Gallery and travel to the relieving chambers. These chambers are actually a configuration of stones that provided a space in the interior of the Great Pyramid for these spent gases to dissipate into the nooks and crannies between the rough-cut interior stones. As soon as the gases dissipated, the check valve at the upper end of the Grand Gallery closed automatically. The result of this combustion and the expelling of gases from the upper end of the Grand Gallery to the relieving chambers is to create a powerful vacuum. Phase 2 produced a powerful vacuum in the upper end of the Grand Gallery. The electrolysis plates are submerged in water. These plates are used to separate hydrogen and oxygen from the water in the Grand Gallery. After the electrolysis process, Phase 2 starts by igniting the gases. When these gases are ignited, a high pressure is created in the Grand Gallery. This high pressure expels the spent gases through the check valve and into the relieving chambers. After the check valve closes, a powerful vacuum is formed in the Grand Gallery. This completes Phase 1 and Phase 2 of the 4 phases that occur in the pumping process inside the Grand Gallery. In review, Phase 1 consists of electrolysis separating hydrogen and oxygen from water, creating a combustible mixture of gases in the upper end of the Grand Gallery. Phase 2 consists of this combustible mixture of gases being ignited, creating a high pressure. This causes the spent gases to be expelled past the check valve in the upper end of the Grand Gallery. These gases dissipate into the relieving chambers. Phase 2 results in a powerful vacuum being formed in the upper end of the Grand Gallery. The use of combustion to create a vacuum is a process not as well known now as it once was. This used to be taught in school, but it is a way to create a powerful vacuum that was utilized in ancient times by the geniuses who created the Grand Gallery for this specific purpose. A lot has occurred during phases 1 and 2, yet what has actually been accomplished so far after these two phases occurred? At this point, no water has been pumped in the upper pump at all. What were the original builders trying to accomplish? What happens next? The answer to these questions are the subject of the next video.